spent in a miserable way.
U.S. News: Seattle's Big Dig hopes remake the city like Boston's did. Seattle, years after the highway takeover movement helped reshape places and souls, this Pacific Northwest city is in the midst of a similar transformation. On Monday, the nation's the 2-mile deep bore tunnel is replacing the Alaskan Way Viaduct, an unsightly, earthquake-damaged elevated highway that runs along the city's
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking, the hot pot, fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park, pot.